So that's what he's telling James and John. But he's not just telling this to James and John. He's telling the other 10 because if you can remember, they came over indignant. Really, really mad when they found out that James and John were calling shotgun on seat positions next to Jesus. And I don't know whether they were just, appalled that James and John would ask for that, or if they're just upset because they didn't think of it first. So he's also letting them know, he's letting all of them know, whoever wants to be great among you, notice he doesn't condemn that impulse. Notice he doesn't say that's something you need to stamp out. He's just redefining what it means to be great. He's kind of rechanneling their efforts. You want to be seen and esteemed. You want seats next to me. If you want to be close to me, you serve. He redefines it for them. And he's redefining it for us too, because every single one of us longs to be great in some sort of significant way, whatever that looks like in our lives. Now, maybe you're listening to that passage and you're thinking, well, yeah, that sounds like typical behavior for men, right? I'm sure you and your girlfriends never sit around arguing over which one of you is the greatest. Lisa and I argue over which one of us is not famous. So maybe you're thinking, this is maybe a male thing. I can't imagine this. But listen, this same passage that Mark writes about was written about by Matthew. Same exact scene described by Matthew. And Matthew includes a fact that Mark left out. I'm going to flip over and read that to you. Same passage, just slightly different opening paragraph with a little fact that Mark left out. This is Matthew chapter 20, verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons and kneeling down asked a favor of him. What is it you want? He asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you're asking, says Jesus, and on it goes from there. So it wasn't just James and John. Mom is in on it. Mom is asking for her sons to be seen and esteemed in these seats of honor. We don't just want to be great. We just don't want to be on our A game. We want all of our family to be on their game too, right? It drives us nuts when they're not. And we want our kids to be great. If you spend any time watching Little League sports, you know how much parents want their kids to be great. We see this, right? So, obviously, this isn't just a man thing. Obviously, this isn't just a disciple thing. Obviously, this isn't just an ancient thing. It's real for us today. So I tried to look at this, and in my quiet time and when I'm journaling, I tried to see, what is it that Jesus is teaching here? What is it that they're after? What are they doing? And what is it that he's redirecting them to? And so I drew a little chart, and I'm going to attempt to draw it here for you. Now, chart is probably overzealous of a word for this. I really just put a few words with a line in between is really all I did. That would be my definition of a chart when I'm journaling. So I just made a column like this, and I said, okay, what is Jesus saying? Jesus is saying that we can serve God and others' needs and we wind up with what? The distinction of being spiritually great. Not only that, not only do we wind up with that, but we get reward. That is eternal. Whether it's seat position next to Jesus or whatever God has in mind for us, the Bible promises that if we serve him and the needs of others, love God, love others as yourself, we are great in God's eyes and we are eternally rewarded for it. What's our other option? Our other option, Jesus says, if you are not for me, you are against me. If you are not with me, you are not with me. So the other option is to serve self. And when you're doing that, you're usually serving the opinions of others, what do we wind up with when we're serving self and the opinions of others? What do we wind up with when we show up in New York City black at a small country church? Self-consciousness, insecurity. Now, sometimes if we can manage to be on our A game, we do get a little attention. But it's always temporary. It's always fleeting because it's always dependent on us being on our A game. And as we've already established, we can't manage to stay on that A game consistently. And there always seems like there's somebody with a better A game just around the corner. So these are our choices. Serve God and the needs of others, and you will be deemed spiritually great in God's eyes and rewarded eternally. Or we can serve our own desires and the opinions of others and try to create greatness for ourselves, but we wind up with a lot of insecurity, and the only reward there is the temporary attention or affection of others. And I promise you it's always temporary, because here's the other way of saying this. We can choose humility and wind up with security, because humility surprisingly breeds security. Or we can choose pride and wind up with insecurity, because pride always breeds insecurity. It's really a question of what you're willing to be enslaved to. That's the language that Jesus used, right? You must be a slave to all if you want to be first. We don't like those words. We don't like enslaved, slave. We don't like any of that in America, right? We value our freedom. But here's the reality. The spiritual reality is we are each enslaved to something, and we will be enslaved to something. We will either willingly enslave ourselves to God and the needs of others, or by default, we will be enslaved to our own desires and the opinions of others. We have to decide. That's what Jesus laid out when he said, those of you who want to be great, and that's okay, need to serve.